لحزب الله بأي حقوق تتقدم على حق الدولة في قرارات السلم والحرب.
Good afternoon on this Sunday, March 1st. I'm Nima Naufal. These are today's headlines. Maronite Patriarch Sharadai laments the failure to elect a new president, blaming officials for the delay. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is in Saudi Arabia for talks with the country's new king ahead of a conference aimed at shoring up financial support for its economy. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu heads to Washington, D.C. to press his case against an emerging deal on Iran's nuclear program. Maronite Patriarch Sharadai laments the failure to elect a new president, blaming officials for the delay. He said during his Sunday sermon at Kirki, the officials are depleting the capabilities of the state through failing to stage the polls. Moreover, Ra'i said that the delay is also leading to the depletion of the people through increased immigration. The vacuum should not be exploited to create a substitute for the president, he stressed, in reference to the ongoing debate at cabinet over a government mechanism to tackle affairs in the absence of a head of state. The patriarch explained that the constitution is clear in stipulating how the government should function in light of the presidential vacuum. Lebanon has been without a president since May of 2014, when the term of Michel Sleiman ended without the election of a successor. Ongoing disputes between the rival March 8 and 14 camps over a compromised presidential candidate have thwarted the polls. The army has foiled an attempt by gunmen to infiltrate the outskirts of the northeastern border town of Arseil, according to the national news agency. It said that the army engaged in clashes with a terrorist, but a number of the gunmen were killed and others wounded in the fighting that erupted at dawn. The mountainous area along the Lebanese-Syrian border has long been a smuggling haven with multiple routes into Syria that have been used to transport weapons and fighters. The army has been targeting gunmen along the country's eastern border to prevent them from advancing into Lebanon. Prime Minister Tamam Salam states that he is still continuing consultations with various political parties to reach an agreement over a new government mechanism. According to the Pan-Arab daily Al Hayat, he told the Daily, quote, "I am committed to the constitution and will not abandon it." He noted that during the past 7 months and since the end of President Michel Sleiman's term, state affairs have been obstructed, and that he hopes the political factions will realize the harm of such practices. They should focus their attention on tackling state affairs, he said, not in an ideal manner, but in an exceptional way, because the situation in the country is not sound and extraordinary measures should be taken into considerations. Syrian Christians fleeing ISIS are welcome to take refuge in Lebanon because their humanitarian case is exceptional, according to Interior Minister Nuhad Mashnout. They are, of course, fleeing the war in Syria, now entering its 5th year. FutureTV is reporting that Mashnout, after discussion with the matter with Prime Minister Tamam Salam and Social Affairs Minister Rashid Darbas, gave the order to allow the inflow of the Assyrian refugees from Syria. Mashnout told the Daily that the case of the Assyrians fleeing massacres meets the extreme humanitarian cases exempted from the recent government policy to stop allowing refugees in. State Minister Nabil Defrej also has been making efforts to facilitate the entry of Assyrian refugees. He visited Mashnout and General Security Chief Magistral General Abbas Ibrahim, accompanied by the leader of the Assyrian community in Lebanon, Bishop Yetron Guliano. Around 220 Assyrians are believed to have been abducted by ISIS in Syria last week. UN envoy Staffan de Mistura is holding talks in the Syrian capital to try to finalize a deal to freeze fighting in the war-ravaged northern city of Aleppo. De Mistura met with Foreign Minister Walid Maalem and agreed to send a delegation from his Damascus office to Aleppo on a fact-finding mission, according to state news agency Sana. His visit started as the army and pro-government fighters have regained territory in southern Syria from forces opposed to President Bashar al-Assad. The Swedish-Italian diplomat hopes to set in motion as soon as possible his project to halt fighting in Aleppo for 6 weeks, according to a member of his delegation who declined to be identified. He has met government officials and opposition chiefs in recent weeks to promote his plan for a temporary truce in Aleppo in order to move aid into the northern city. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is in Saudi Arabia for talks with the country's new king ahead of a conference aimed at shoring up financial support from wealthy Gulf states for Cairo's battered economy. A Saudi official says the two leaders will also be discussing Sisi's proposal for a joint anti-terrorism military force. The official spoke anonymously because he was not authorized to release the information. However, King Salman greeted Sisi at Riyadh's airport upon his arrival this afternoon. The Egyptian president was last in Saudi Arabia in January following the death of his close ally, King Abdullah. Under Abdullah, Saudi Arabia gave billions of dollars in aid to boost Sisi's government. The kingdom is also a key organizer of the investment conference scheduled later this month. And while President Sisi addressed the kingdom, his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, was also in Saudi Arabia. Erdogan was set to meet with Abdulaziz on Monday, although he's set to arrive to Riyadh. In statements to the Saudi Al Arabia channel, Sisi stated that the synchronization of the visit with Turkish president is a coincidence. Tensions have arisen between the two countries as the Turkish president has reiterated his critical comments on Egypt's internal situation on different occasions since the ouster of former President Mohamed Morsi in 2013, which resulted in the downgrading of relations with Turkey. Saudi Arabia played a role in alleviating similar tensions between Egypt and Qatar late in 2014 through a reconciliation initiative brokered by the conservative oil-rich kingdom. Coming up next, thousands of Russian opposition supporters protest the assassination of Boris Nemtsov. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching the 4:20 o'clock news on Future Television. An Egyptian court ruled as unconstitutional a clause in the election law that draws voting districts, a verdict that is almost certain to delay parliamentary elections scheduled to start later this month. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said in a statement that he has ordered the government to adopt the necessary legislative amendments within a month to comply with the Supreme Constitutional Court's ruling. Another court is likely to rule later this month on whether the election should be delayed, but a date for the new vote would be decided by the Supreme Electoral Commission, which went into an emergency meeting on Sunday following the verdict. Egypt has not had an elected legislator since 2012, when the Supreme Constitutional Court ruled that the lower chamber was not constitutionally elected. Now, a court in Egypt also ruled the Palestinian Islamic movement Hamas a terrorist group. The ruling by the Cairo Court of Urgent Matters followed its January 31st decision that the armed wing of Hamas, Al-Qassam Brigades, is a terrorist group. The decision taken days after the Sinai Peninsula attack that killed at least 33 soldiers and policemen. The court says that Hamas, an offshoot of Egypt's blacklisted Muslim Brotherhood group, has participated in various attacks in Egypt, particularly in a series of bloody attacks in Egypt's restive Sinai Peninsula, killing 33. Hamas was founded in 1987. It is a close ally of Morsi and his Muslim Brotherhood group. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is on his way to Washington, D.C. to press his case against an emerging deal on Iran's nuclear program in a contentious address to the U.S. Congress, which he said he is delivering out of concern for Israel's security. The address has caused an uproar that has exposed tensions between Israel and its most important ally, the United States. In accepting a Republican invitation to address Congress, Netanyahu angered the White House, which was not consulted with in advance of the invite, as well as Democrats who were forced to choose between showing support for Israel and backing their president. Netanyahu plans to express his disapproval over a potential deal between Iran and world powers that he says falls short of preventing Tehran from having the ability to make an atomic bomb. A preliminary deadline is due later this month. Thousands of Russian opposition supporters are gathering for a march through Moscow in memory of Kremlin critic Boris Nemtsov, whose murder has increased concern about Russia's future among opponents of President Vladimir Putin. Thousands of people laid flowers and lit candles on a bridge near the Kremlin where the opposition politician and former deputy prime minister was shot dead late on Friday. Nemtsov, who was 55, was one of the leading lights of an opposition struggling to revive its fortunes 3 years after mass rallies against Putin that failed to prevent him returning to the presidency after 4 years as prime minister. The opposition has little support outside big cities, and Putin has now been Russia's dominant leader since 2000, when ailing President Boris Yeltsin chose the former KGB spy as his successor, a role Nemtsov has once been destined to play. And Pope Francis has led tens of thousands of people in prayer in St. Peter's Square for Christians and others who have been kidnapped or are victims of other intolerable brutality in Syria and Iraq, he says. The Pope appealed to everyone in line with their act to possibly alleviate the suffering. This comes after more than 220 Syrian Christians were kidnapped last week by ISIS with no word on their fate. Francis called for silent prayers for those sisters and brothers who suffer for their faith in Syria and Iraq. The packed square fell silent for a minute or so. The Pope said he wanted to assure the victims of kidnappings, abuse, and other violence that they are not forgotten. Sunday fun wouldn't be the same without late-night show host Jimmy Fallon and his wheel of musical impressions. In this clip, he challenges Christina Aguilera to a game of random musical impressions. Take a look.
All right, how it works is we're going to take turns hitting this button here, which activates the musical impressions generator. It'll land on one random singer that one of us can do an impression of, and then one random song title. Now, whoever's turn it is, don't be nervous, this is going to be fun.
All right.
Whoever's turn it is has to do an impression of that musician doing that song. All right? Now, since you're my guest, why don't you go first, and we'll play the game. This microphone's for you.
All right. Oh,
just,
it's shiny.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Oh.
That works. Cher. Singing the Folgers Coffee. Do you know that? The best.
Get my share on.
Yeah. You got to get into the character.
The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Oh my God.
He's so good. All right, here we go.
Your turn.
Okay, David Bowie. Grand Old Flag. It's a great song. All right, here we go.
David Bowie.
Okay, here we go.
You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, home of the free and the brave.
All right.
Okay.
You're up.
Give me something. Brittany.
Britney Spears? You know Britney Spears, right? Britney Spears?
A little bit.
Yeah. Doing This Little Piggy?
Okay.
This little piggy went to the market. This little piggy stayed home. This little piggy ate rosary. When we all the way home.
On that musical note, we end our bulletin for today. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Maronite Patriarch Shaddai laments the failure to elect a new president, blaming officials for the delay. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is in Saudi Arabia for talks with the country's new king ahead of a conference aimed at shoring up financial support for its economy. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu heads to Washington, D.C. to press his case against an emerging deal on Iran's nuclear program. Those are your Sunday headlines live on Future Television. I'm Yumna Nofal signing off. Have a good week.
دعمنا للجيش والقوى الأمنية غير مشروط وبلا حدود. لن نعترف لحزب الله بأي حقوق تتقدم على